Hello everyone, this is Robert, and I was in desperate need for a new computer. My old one was like 6 or 7 years old. It was getting really slow, and I do a lot of video editing, 3D modeling, things like that, so I decided to build a new one, but I decided to try the small form factor route and pack as much power as I could in the smallest package. So this is my new PC. This is Ortolan. Let's take a closer look at what's inside. This isn't the first time I've built a computer, but this is the first time I've really gone and built like a really high spec computer, something that is way beyond what my current needs are. And when I first started researching parts online, I came across the SFF PC subreddit, small form factor PC, and I started looking at some YouTube videos and whatnot, and I really liked the idea of these just kind of ultra small, compact computers. Something that would also look really attractive on your desk. My old computer was just, kind of your typical mid-tower case, and it doesn't really look attractive. But this looks really nice and has a good home on my desk. And to give you kind of an idea, just the size of this thing, it's really not that big. It is relatively small for what's inside. So let's get straight down to the specs, and I'll tell you what's inside of this thing. I have a link below for PC Parts Picker so you can see everything that's on here, but I'll kind of do a brief overview. The case itself comes from Encased. Form D basically makes the exact same one. This is a T1, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but that's what this is. You get 2 screws along the back. This pops off, sides kind of fall down, and they come off just like that. These are sandwich style cases, which means you have half the components here, and then on the back side you have the GPU, and it kind of is split down the middle. The power supply is a Corsair SF750. 750 is plenty enough for this build. The motherboard is an Asus B850i. For the RAM, I'm using Team Group 96 gigs, DDR5 6400. That's about as fast as I could buy for the price. I went with 96 gigs because 48 really just didn't seem like enough. I'm regularly using about that much on my old PC between SolidWorks, having Bamboo Studio open, DaVinci Resolve open for video editing and everything else. I'm kind of hitting that limit pretty quickly, so I think 96 will do me good. For the processor, I'm using an AMD 9950X3D, so that's maybe a little bit overkill, but I definitely do a lot of 3D modeling and, some occasional gaming. For the cooler, I'm using an all-in-one. This is a Cooler Master Atmos Stealth. I went with the Stealth because there are no RGBs on this case. There's actually no real LEDs whatsoever. This is a stealth build. Everything is black on black on black with little accents of dark gray. So let's flip it around to the other side. The other side, as you can see, is basically the GPU. This is an Asus Prime RTX 5080. This is the only place in the build that I maybe skimped a little bit. I could have gone with the 5090, but it was an extra $1,000 on top of it. I think 16 gigs of video memory should be enough. So I'm pretty happy with that. And between the RTX 5080 and the CPU, I'm easily sitting within the range of the 750 watt power supply. I did forget to mention that for a hard drive, underneath here, I'm using a Samsung 990 Pro 4 terabyte. So I have 4 terabyte storage on here, and I also have an external 20 terabyte drive. So I've got 24 terabytes of total system storage, which is pretty good for video editing. I did have to make a few small modifications, nothing too crazy, both for aesthetic reasons and also for fit. You can see this little 3D printed bar right here. This is not factory. It screws directly into the power supply and actually helps tidy up these cables. The side panels are relatively thin, so if these cables are kind of popping out any amount, the side panels will kind of bulge a little bit. Everything is so tight in here, you need to be mindful of where all the wires are going. As you can see, there's very little in terms of actual exposed wiring. And there is quite a bit of wiring in here, but all of it's just kind of neatly tucked up and zip tied in place so you don't really see any of it. One of the other things that I did is, this case is so pretty and so clean, but it has some kind of poor hardware. These are kind of the standoffs that they want you to use for, like, you know, in between here and in between the two side panels. These are really ugly and they just kind of didn't really work with the aesthetic I was going for, so I swapped those out and actually found stuff like this online. These are just kind of little specific standoffs for, I think it was like for quadcopters or such, but that's what's inside of here rather than those hideous little things. They're all like up inside here. You can't really see them, but that actually helped the aesthetics inside quite a bit. For the radiator, I had to swap out the stock, I think they're 25mm fans with Noctua 15mm so that I could get the top to fit. Some people will just swap out one of the fans, leave one slim and make the other taller. I think this is the one that they do taller. But this is kind of where all my wire management went, and I had the stock fan on there and it was just way too tight. There was not enough air around everything. So I went with 15mm for both of these. And it works out pretty well. The thing at idle is basically silent. It does get a little loud when you're at 100% CPU, but at idle, it's basically silent. So these definitely work. You're probably missing a little bit of performance on the very top end, but I like the look of it. They're nice and slim and it all fits inside the case. I really like the look of this case. When I was looking around, a lot of stuff that I saw is just your typical stamped steel with, you know, kind of a powder coat finish. This is much, much nicer. This is the gunmetal color, by the way. It's just kind of like a really dark, you know, what you would call titanium color, and it looks really, really handsome, especially with the side panels. This is all CNC machined. This is just really, really pretty, and you can see the top panel is the same kind of a thing. You know, this isn't just stamped steel. This is really nice stuff. It is a little bit spendy, and I went with the encased because both companies are kind of out of stock, and they were the only ones that had this finish in stock, so that's why I went with them. From what I understand, they're almost identical. There's a few subtle differences between them, but I really didn't have an issue with this other than the back. I'll talk about the back here in a second. But yeah, everything went together really well. It is obviously very tight, but I'm used to doing, you know, beetle weight, insect class combat robots where everything is really tight. This wasn't that bad. The only thing I don't like about this case is the rear panel. As you can see, it's really cluttered and there's a lot of kind of features I'm not using. You've got the open holes here. You can install buttons in here. You can also put tubes for water cooling if you're running an external radiator, but you have large gaps here and there. There's a lot of configuration in where everything can sit inside this case, but you're left with a lot of strange gaps. And it just doesn't look right compared to the minimalist aesthetic of everything else. And keep in mind, this whole piece is also aftermarket. Normally, it would have the standard GPU plate in there, and it would look something like that. So you'd have this nice, big, ugly silver piece sitting right there. This is the travel kit that comes from Formed, not Encased. Basically, they're the same company. But this is the travel kit, which replaces this and gives you a nice black piece. It's mostly compatible. I read a lot online if it was compatible, and it mostly is. You don't have any mounting holes, but I just drilled a couple holes and mounted it. But it really doesn't look all that great. It doesn't fix everything. So here's what I did with it. So with a little bit of time with SolidWorks and my 3D printer, I cleaned it up quite a bit. These files actually I found on Printables, just nice little snap covers. This is Bamboo Labs PETG Carbon Fiber Titan Gray, and it's a really good color match to the gunmetal color. As you can see there, they're almost the exact same color. Everything else is PLA carbon fiber, and that matches really well. And it just kind of cleans up this whole back panel. And of course, I had to do a name badge in that weird little space right there, and laser engraved, as you can see. So yeah, here's what it looks like with the side panels off and with the side panels on. And also the IEC inlet for power, you don't have to mount that on the outside. All the instructions show it from the outside. Looks really clunky, looks kind of ugly. You can actually mount it from the inside and it's nice and flush. So that's what it looks like with all the little modifications and tweaks. Really clean and on. There are no lights whatsoever inside this enclosure. It is very, very stealth. So let's see what it looks like on my actual computer desk. So here's what the computer looks like on my desk in the office. As you can see, it really doesn't take up that much room. Looks really nice, doesn't really even look like a computer most of the time. But it's really not that big of a deal having it right next to you. At idle, it's almost silent, doesn't really make any noise, and it just kind of has like an air blowing, whooshing sound. My wife says it sounds a lot like just an air purifier, and it kind of looks like an air purifier when it's going. So that's what it looks like on the desk. And when I get done with a lot of wire management, which I desperately need to do, I'm going to kind of tuck it even further kind of into that corner. It really doesn't need that much room, and it's got quite a bit against the wall. For the rest of the system, the monitor is an LG 38-inch ultra-wide, exact model down below. I really like using an ultra-wide. It's great for SolidWorks, and it's really nice for video editing. Down below, I just got this. This is a Corsair Xeneon Edge, which is kind of this ultra-wide, slim little monitor that is really useful for a lot of different things. I can load Discord on it. I can have Bamboo Studio going so I can actually see the feed from my various printers. It's really good just kind of as an auxiliary monitor for various things. Discord is fantastic, or for controlling your audio. That's kind of how I generally use it. Speaking of audio, I've got a couple of speakers here. For my DAC, I'm using a Topping E70 Velvet, so that is USB directly into the computer, and then that feeds out to the speakers, which are active Genelec 8030Cs in the lovely raw aluminum, and they're on the tabletop stands here. These are like 1/4-inch solid steel stands, and this thing sounds pretty good. This is also my home office. I work from home 2 to 3 days a week, so I'm in here a lot. This is what the system looks like. Let's talk about performance. In terms of raw performance, this thing slaps. It can run pretty much anything that I need to do. Right now I'm running the superposition benchmarking tool. This is 4K extreme. I'm averaging 210 frames per second. This is what it sounds like fully loaded. I'm going to talk about the sound here in a second. SolidWorks, I can turn on real view graphics, and pretty much any model that I can throw at it, even the full Copperhead model, I can rotate it and spin it without any hesitation. I have yet to find an assembly that will slow this down at all or tax it. Video editing is basically trivial, although my video isn't really the highest quality, I will admit, so it's not really that big of a comparison. The biggest thing I noticed was slicing 3D models. If I'm doing a relatively large or complex model on the old computer, you know, it might take like a minute or something if I have a lot of organic supports, things like that. Most models on this are basically instantaneous, to the point where I click slice and it just instantly changes color and I'm done. For larger complex models that maybe take like a day or two to print, something really large, it might take like 5 seconds max, but really it doesn't take that long, and the fans really don't even need to spin up for something like that. So that was actually pretty nice to see. In terms of noise, I don't know how much my mic is actually filtering out, but I was kind of surprised that it's a little bit louder than I had expected. A lot of the YouTubers will sit there with their microphone and, you know, click the mouse button, kind of show you that relative sound. It's louder than you'd think in person. I don't really have to speak over it, but there is definitely this fan noise coming from this corner. And the corner probably doesn't help it that much, but you notice it. You absolutely notice it. I would not call this silent. I've measured it right here at the seating position, and at 100% CPU and GPU, I'm at about 40 decibels, maybe 41, which is still very, very quiet, but you do notice it. It's like you've got a small tabletop fan running, something like that. So don't always believe all of the tech YouTubers, when they say it's silent. There is some, 27,000. There is some optimization that I need to do. I think the current thought process right now is to undervolt and overclock, and that will overall lower the temperatures. So I still need to play around with that and optimize it. I haven't done any optimization whatsoever. So that's something I'm going to be getting into. But hopefully this video gave you some kind of idea of small form factor computers, and if you're looking for, can this fit, can this work? I see a lot of questions online about, can you do an all-in-one cooler? Can you do this? Can you fit a 5080 in this case? So yeah, you can absolutely do a 5080 with an all-in-one. In this case, you might just need to do a little bit of 3D printing or wire management. So as always, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.